At the beginning of the story, we see a prison in Siberia where a large number of German soldiers were lined up. Actually, after the end of World War II, Russia had captured many German soldiers and forced them to work day and night in the coal mines. Although the security of this prison was quite low, still no one ever tried to escape from it because all around the prison there was nothing but snow. This prison was about 14,000 kilometers away from any human settlement, so even if a prisoner somehow managed to escape, his death in the freezing cold of Siberia was certain. The prison was built in the middle of thousands of kilometers of snow, stretching in every direction. That's why no prisoner could even imagine escaping from there. But among these prisoners, there was one man who was extremely sharp minded and wanted to escape from the prison to return to his wife and daughter. This prisoner's name was Clemens Forell, who had been sentenced to 25 years in this prison. And Clemens absolutely did not want to spend half of his life here. At any cost, Clemens wanted to escape. Luckily, one day Clemens got the chance to run away, and he managed to escape by hiding inside a coal carrying freight train. Now, outside the prison, when he looked up at the open sky and saw the stars, he was overwhelmed with joy. But this happiness lasted only for a short while. After going a little further, the freight train was stopped, and when Clemens peeked outside, a Russian soldier was standing in front of him pointing a gun. Unfortunately, Clemens was caught here, and as punishment for escaping from prison, he was locked in an open air cell. The cold was unbearable, and the rain at night made his condition even worse. Clemens was kept in that cell not just for a few hours, but for 2 whole days. Now, after 2 days, the next morning, the prison warden came to him. Instead of torturing him, he simply took him out of the cell and said, "Your companions are eagerly waiting for you." When Clemens met his fellow prisoners, they were all waiting for him with sticks and rods in their hands. They were furious at him because, due to his escape attempt, all of them had been kept hungry for the last 2 days. At that moment, Clemens understood why the warden had said, "Your companions are waiting for you." As soon as they saw Clemens, the prisoners attacked him and beat him up badly. He was injured so severely in the beating that he had to be admitted to the prison hospital. The doctor of this prison was also a German prisoner. As soon as Clemens regained consciousness, he told the doctor that he wanted to escape from the prison once again, and that he needed his help. The doctor was astonished at Clemens' bravery, wondering how he could still think of escaping after going through so much. Even after going through so much, he was still not ready to give up. The doctor explained to him that escaping alive from this prison was impossible, and even if he did manage to escape, he would die in the freezing cold outside. But the reality was that even if he didn't escape, his death was certain, because the coal mines where he worked contained very high levels of carbon, which entered the body through the air and caused deadly diseases like cancer. That's why the doctor told Clemens that he should make one last attempt to escape from the prison. After that, the doctor gave Clemens all his warm clothes, shoes, and the necessary items, and also informed him that the Russian soldiers hid their food near the railway tracks. Along with this, he handed Clemens a gun so that he could protect himself. Actually, the doctor had collected all these items earlier, because he too had wanted to escape from the prison. But just a week ago, he found out that he had cancer and had no more than a month left to live. Now he gave Clemens a lunchbox and said, "If you survive, deliver this lunchbox to my family and tell them that I am no longer alive." Once again, in the darkness of night, Clemens escaped. But this time, instead of boarding a freight train, he decided to walk. After walking all night, he continued walking even in the morning because he feared that Russian soldiers might catch him. When the warden learnt in the morning that Clemens had escaped, he went straight to the doctor's room to interrogate him. But before he could get there, the doctor had already taken his own life, because he knew that after hearing about Clemens' escape, the warden would torture him to death. After that, the warden sent several Russian soldiers to search for Clemens and ordered them to bring him back alive. But even after days of searching, they could not find any trace of him. Clemens was lucky, because due to the snowfall, his footprints were being erased, making it difficult to track him. Everyone began to believe that Clemens must have frozen to death in the cold. But the warden refused to believe it, because he knew that Clemens was very strong and would not give up so easily. So he ordered the search to continue. Meanwhile, we see Clemens moving forward with full determination, braving the snowstorm. 9 days after escaping from the prison, he suddenly heard the barking of dogs. As he turned around, he saw a sledge coming towards him. Before he could run, the sledge reached him and passed right over him. At that very moment, Clemens opened his eyes.
Clemens had been walking for the past 9 days, and now his food had run out. Because of hunger and exhaustion, it became difficult for him to keep moving forward, but even then, he did not give up and somehow kept going. After a few more days, his body finally gave in and he fainted from hunger. A few hours later, when he regained consciousness, he heard a strange sound around him. That's when he spotted a seal, and his eyes lit up instantly. He quickly pulled out his gun and tried his best to aim, but because of weakness and fatigue, his shot missed, and the seal began to run away. For Clemens, who had finally found a small ray of hope for survival after many days, this chance could not be lost. He immediately ran after the seal, but while running, the ice beneath him broke, and he fell into the water, injuring his leg. Still, despite being wounded, he continued to chase the seal. Just as he was about to fire, the seal hid behind a rock. Clemens moved a little further and spotted the seal again. Before it could slip back into the water, he fired his last bullet, and luckily it struck the seal. Seeing this, Clemens rejoiced, because now he no longer had to worry about food during his journey. After many days, Clemens finally ate a full meal, rested a little, and then continued his trek. On this long journey, Clemens was completely alone, surrounded by nothing but endless snow. In such an environment, his mental state could have broken down, so he kept talking to himself, telling himself positive things to stay motivated. At the same time, he constantly used his compass to stay on track, so that he wouldn't get lost in the snowy wilderness. In this way, days passed and turned into months. After continuously walking for 2 months, Clemens finally saw a small tree in the snowy expanse. Seeing this tree made him so happy that it felt as if he had discovered a treasure, and he ran toward it and hugged it tightly. That tree was proof that after 2 long months of walking, he had finally crossed the endless frozen plain and was about to reach the forest. And just a little further, exactly as he had imagined, the snowfield ended and the forest began. In the forest, Clemens was overjoyed. He collected wood, lit a fire, and after many months, finally slept peacefully. But whether the next day would bring him peace or not, no one knew. On the other side, we see the warden, who was still searching for Clemens. He ordered his search party to look for him within a radius of 500 kilometers. Meanwhile, Clemens was moving through the forest when suddenly a snowstorm struck. The storm was so powerful that even massive trees were being ripped out from the ground. The trees began to fall. As Clemens tried to move forward, a massive tree fell directly on him. Fortunately, that evening, 2 men who were passing by in search of gold saw Clemens and managed to save his life just in time. After that, the 3 of them continued their journey together, and after several days of traveling, they finally made it out of the snowy plains. On the way, they came across a river, and to cross it, they built a wooden raft. While crossing the river, they began talking and sharing childhood stories with one another. But in the middle of it, the current grew stronger, and the raft spun out of control. One of the men lost his balance and fell straight into the water. He didn't know how to swim and started drowning. Seeing this, Clemens immediately jumped in and somehow managed to drag the man back to shore, saving his life. Meanwhile, their other companion abandoned them both to die and continued forward alone. That man was extremely greedy. He assumed the 2 of them had drowned, and out of greed, he kept all the gold with himself. A little later, when Clemens and the rescued man returned to the camp, the man grew furious at his greedy friend and shot him dead. After that, Clemens and the man picked up their supplies and carried on with their journey. They kept walking for months, hoping that someday they would come across human habitation. But winter returned once again, and the forests around them were buried beneath thick sheets of snow. The man who had taken on the supplies found them far too heavy, making it hard to walk in the snow. Seeing this, Clemens tried to ease his burden and offered to carry some of his load for a while. But the man grew suspicious, thinking that perhaps Clemens wanted to steal his gold. So he attacked Clemens and pushed him down, leaving him unconscious. A while later, when Clemens regained consciousness, he saw a pack of wolves approaching him. To save his life, he tried climbing up a tree, but while climbing, one wolf caught hold of his leg. The tree itself was weak and it broke in the middle, causing Clemens to fall back down.
It was written that if anyone sheltered him, they would be called a traitor. Now, unwillingly, Clement had to leave the village, because if he didn't, the warden would punish the villagers too. Before leaving, the villagers gave him food supplies and a hunting dog. In this long journey, Clement had now found a companion. So, he no longer felt lonely. Both of them kept walking for many days. Along the way, they came across a lumber mill, and the dog, in search of food, ran inside. To save his dog, Clement went into the mill. The workers there recognized him and took him to the owner. Clement told the owner his intention. He climbed up a bridge and leaped onto a train passing below, escaping once again from the warden's catches. Days passed like this, and Clement gradually continued his journey. By 1952, it had been 7 years since he escaped from the prison. At that time, he was in Central Asia, wandering around a village fair. In the fair, he saw all kinds of food stalls. He wanted to eat, but he had no money, so he controlled his hunger and walked ahead. Then he noticed two girls selling pancakes at the fair. Clement desperately wanted to eat one, but he didn't even have a single coin in his pocket. Feeling dejected, he began to walk away. But one of the girls felt pity for him and broke off a piece of pancake and handed it to him. At first, Clement felt a bit awkward, but then he thanked the girls and ate the pancake. At that fair, there was a regiment. There was also a man who had seen all of this. After that, Clement went to a church and this man followed him inside. This man had also once been a prisoner, so he didn't hand Clement over to the police and tried to help him. Afterward, he took Clement to his home, where Clement finally shaved after many years and returned to his old appearance. Then the man gave Clement a new passport so that he could cross the Russia-Germany border and reach Germany. Clement was very grateful to him. Before leaving, Clement thanked the man and set off towards the Russia-Germany border. A few weeks later, Clement reached the Russian border and showed his passport to the Russian soldiers stationed there. Clement feared that the soldier might recognize him or detect the forged passport, but luckily nothing of the sort happened, and the soldier allowed him to cross the border. Seeing this, Clement was so happy that he couldn't stop himself from laughing. Finally, he reached the bridge which, once crossed, would take him to his homeland Germany. But halfway across, a bright light struck his eyes, and when he opened them, he saw the warden in front of him. Turning back, Clement realized he was still on Russian soil, meaning the warden could still arrest him. At that moment, Clement's heart sank, thinking all his years of struggle might go in vain. But then something happened that Clement himself hadn't expected. The warden let him pass and allowed him to continue his journey. At first, Clement couldn't believe it, but he bravely moved forward. In fact, the warden was inspired by Clement's will to survive and bravery. That's why he didn't arrest him and let him return to his country. The warden even told him, "This fight was just between two soldiers, one me, one you, and you won it. Go, live your life." Finally, Clement crossed the border and reached Germany. Afterward, he got close to his home and saw his daughter and wife. A little later, they left the house to go to church, and Clement followed them there. However, he didn't call out to his daughter yet, hoping that one day she would see her father. When her daughter turned around, she recognized him and ran to hug her father. Seeing him alive after all these years brought indescribable joy to his wife. Finally, the three of them embraced each other, and with that, this film based on a true story came to an end. We hope you enjoyed today's story.